I want to reference back to that story from a few weeks ago. We'll get to that plus some ghosts of tasty Canadians on the way this hour, as well as all of your calls as we go Ghost to Ghost AM. This is Ian Cutter. Just making a last second correction to the blog at coasttocoastam.com because I got Matt Allen here. He's the late afternoon drive host, 6 to 9. Matt, is that what you do on WPRO AM, the Coast affiliate?
That's it, Ian, absolutely. 6 to 9 p.m. every night, every weekday.
Okay, so am I interrupting any of your happy Halloween activities? Or?
No, actually, it's pretty late, and I'm ecstatic to be able to be here on Ghost to Ghost. This is like a legendary radio show that my whole family and I have listened to for many, many years. I get to be on it, so I'm kind of geeked out right now.
Well, you know, first of all, I was going to say, you really enjoy your show. I caught it when I was out on the East Coast not too long ago, and you're such a nice guy that every time I see your picture on your website looking like you're about to kick somebody's butt, that's the same guy I met. I mean, that was going to fold me in half, and I remember it's like having a nice conversation with him.
Everybody says that to me, I don't know. I just big on trying to report the image that really didn't accurately portray me.
Could it be the scowl? I don't know. Could it be the, excuse me, you're parking in my space kind of look that you have? So let me just say, I posted this photo. I'm going to post it up again because I meant to do it earlier, so I'm doing it right now. This photograph of this little girl, it's on my blog if people want to catch up to it. I think it'll be up there in a second. At coasttocoastam.com. It's the first link. I put up a couple of links, but it's the first link now that I just posted. This is the image of this little girl with her grandmother over her shoulder. That was sent to your show. You were the first one to show this to me, and then about a week later I posted it during on my blog. We talked about it during Crypto News. So talk about this. Who sent you this photo? What do you remember about how you got this ghost photo before we start taking calls tonight for Ghost to Ghost?
Well, what happened was this actually came into one of our colleagues in the building where we work, and was kind of spread around the building. And the story that was told to me was that this was a person, there was a young woman who lived in Rhode Island, who I believe still lives in Rhode Island, and this is her niece. And it's kind of, I say niece, but I think it's kind of a second cousin type of thing, you know, if you call your cousin with uncle and aunt because they're older than you, type of thing.
Sure.
But it's a relative, and she was by herself. I think the little girl was like a kind of 3 or 4 years old in the picture. And I believe there was just kind of, she was babysitting in the middle of the day and just messing around with the camera. If I needed these cell phone pictures, to be honest with you, I can't remember now, but it's a digital photo sometimes. And the person, there was nobody else in the house with them, they were by themselves, and they took the picture and kind of forgot about it. Now that I'm just talking about it, I do recall being a cell phone. And so they took this picture, you know, she kind of just, cell phone was closed, and that was it, forgotten about it. And then later on, when the cell phone picture was downloaded to a computer, you get to see that picture and that woman's image in the upper left-hand corner there, who, you know, according to the young lady who took the picture, she's assuming it's an elderly relative of theirs that passed away, or a grandmother or great-grandmother. But she says because based on the actual clothing there, but because the face is so hidden by the little girl's hair, she can't even be 100% sure of that.
And just for people, we're just playing with that. Just for people who are tuning in, I just double checked it, and yes, you can go catch this photograph right now. If you go to coasttocoastam.com and then click onto my blog, it'll take you to the first link of this ghostly photo of this little girl, I mean, this grandmotherly image that's up over her shoulders. This is Matt Allen of WPRO. Again, go ahead.
And just the interesting things about it is that there are, you know, I was looking at it on my iPhone, and I can blow it up on the iPhone a little bit, and it kind of looks like these eyes have a very remarkable resemblance between the little girl and the grandmother, and they wasn't going to be the grandmotherly figure, but sticking in the background while it reflects the light source into the room, almost seems two-dimensional, it's not human. It doesn't have a warmth that you would want to that little girl does. It's, you know, we have some of those listeners like, whether it's status, and some of them are very confident in Photoshop and whatnot. And comments that, you're going to do something like this for whiskey, little girl whiskey blonde hairs that are in front of the building space are extremely difficult to do in a sort of accuracy and sort of, competency.
Because it wouldn't be too fine in the Photoshop, I would think. And actually, I was looking at this too, and there's something between both her eye and the eye of the grandmother image. And that's what this is. This is the face of her grandmother behind her.
That's what it is. That's not her grandmother. I think it would be your great grandmother's.
But I mean, both of their eyes are focused on the same thing. So if it were just a digital fluke, if for some reason some of these pixelations existed and then they came together on this, I don't even know how that's possible, but if it were just some sort of technical error or programming mistake or something in the cell phone that allowed for these two images to be captured together at the same, what are the odds that they would both be focused in the same way at the same place? You know what I mean? I mean, it's
very bizarre picture, and what's interesting about it, I think, is that the similarity in the little girl and the eye of the old lady actually had some listeners actually get to do it, just got to speculate that it could actually be an older version of the little girl, kind of future type of version of the little girl, maybe goes back to visit, and some kind of time warp.
Okay, then that maybe that's because the eyes look identical, it's her of the now and then her of the future.
Yeah, so people speculate on that. That's interesting, but
it's very tricky, folks. I mean, whatever it is, it's a cool shot, and I think it's the kind of thing that we look at and we try to come up with an explanation for how it could have been captured on a cell phone camera.
Yeah, right, but they say that the clothing, the pattern of clothing again in the background is something that was indicative of the elderly relative. Great grandmother actually, and she had passed away just not too distant past before, and so they kind of look at this as a visit from Gianna.
Very interesting. Matt Allen is the late afternoon drive for 69 WPRO AM in Providence, Rhode Island. We put up a photo on my blog just in case. In fact, I may even have the webmasters go ahead and move that photo if they want to capture it from my blog and put it up on the main page for everybody to get a better look at it. Please go ahead. I just at the last second had to put it up. And thank you, Matt, for joining us. So did you ever hear back from the family or from the people that sent that photo in? Was there ever an update from them?
Well, I think we did like a couple rounds of some of the radio stations that are in our building, and that was it. And it kind of just fell off the map, and I don't know, that could be for lack of knowledge on my end, but I don't know what happened to them. I don't know if they were informed and showed it to anybody else in the media. Maybe it was just kind of a weird thing for them. They were really looking for, anything more than a couple of minutes of fun, just show off to the media here, because I can from my head, they're trying to get a reality show out of it.
Right. Yeah.
More to the veracity of it, because if they're not looking for anything,
right. And they
in the game.
They can sue you or something for putting up on their website. So very good. Let me know if you do hear back from them, though, because I'm sure sometime in the future somebody might want to talk to them and see whether or not either that image of the great grandmother appeared over the little girl's shoulder again, or whether they came up with an explanation from that cell phone camera. Either one would be an interesting update. And thank you, Matt Allen, for your time by getting us started on this. Yeah, look forward to seeing you again when we get out that way again.
I definitely will. You know what? I'll do a little digging for you, and if I get a hold of the people that the originated the photo, I'll contact you and picture people that sent you, and maybe have that on the script as well.
Great, thanks. Say hi to Paul. Okay.
I will. Thank you very much.
It's Ghost to Ghost State Enterprise. That's what Alan called Ghost to Ghost affiliate in Providence. Well, one person who wouldn't be terribly surprised by that story if it turns out to be real is Paul Kimball. Now, Paul is a producer and a writer and what would just ask? Paul, other than co-write, co-direct, and co-produce, you also co-host everything you do?
No, and hi Ian from Canada, from a tasty Canadian. No, the Ghost Tasty series is the only one that I actually am brave enough to appear in front of the camera. I'm usually quite happy, and so are the viewers. See my work behind the camera.
But in Ghost Cases, which just debuted on Canadian television, you are the co-host for this.
Yes.
Okay.
A friend of mine, Holly Stevens, and I co-host the series. Yeah.
Okay, so what was your objective in doing a story on Canadian ghosts?
Well, it's not just Canadian ghosts. 8 of the episodes were filmed in Canada. 5 of them we actually filmed in the United Kingdom, in the Chelsea region around Manchester. So it's got a bit of an international flavor. And the idea was to do something a little different. I mean, there's not lots of ghost shows out there. Obviously, it's a popular subject. But our idea was to do less of, ghost hunting, as it were, and more of just 2 people, and they could just be any 2 people. They could be you or any of your listeners. It just so happens that Holly and I, she has a science background, I have a history background, and we go out to these places where they're reported ghost stories or hauntings. We interview the witnesses, we talk to them, we get their stories, and then we say, right, all right, let's see if we can have anything happen to us. So it's really very much sort of and I come from a documentary background. It's the documentary series, and it's also an experiential look at the kind of thing that any of us can do if we find haunted inns or haunted forts or whatever. You can go in and do these sorts of things yourself. We also happen to have the physical tools of the ghost investigating trade, the EMF meters, digital cameras, the audio recorders, and all of that. So there is the sort of scientific or the pseudo-scientific side. At the end of the day, it comes down to whether we experience anything or not.
That's sort of like the producer's worst nightmare, is to find out that you're going to leave up the main action of any television show to variables outside of their control, so that either if nothing happens, then they've got nothing to work with. So frequently on these ghost hunter shows, you can see the kind of the emphasis that the ghost hunters put on amping up the suspense for every little twig snap and every raindrop that happens outside. And in effect, it ends up, I think, in a lot of cases, kind of ruining their credibility because nothing happens. They keep whipping the camera around going, what's that? What's that? But it isn't anything. So what was it like for you when you would go to these places where ghostly occurrences had happened before and nothing happened?
In most cases, and I will say there were actually 2 where nothing happened. I mean, one in which I'm convinced it was the residents of my old university, actually. I'm convinced when I was a student there 20 years ago, and I'm even more convinced now that it's just, sort of legends that have been passed down. And so that just means instead of filming 13 episodes, you wind up filming 14 because obviously it is television, and if you get an episode like that, it's not going to make it to air other than in the sort of season wrap-up where we revisit the best and worst evidence and some of the stories. And places that are supposed to be haunted, and you just find out there's a rational explanation for everything, and these things really are just legends. And not every house or place that's supposed to be haunted is haunted. The rest of the time, we actually, that's the nice thing. It's not totally reliant on us. Sometimes when people, I'm a firm believer in the television industry, as I'm sure you know, Ian, people will often tell you talking heads are dead. You don't want to see talking heads. But I'm a firm believer that when people are telling you compelling and interesting first-hand witness stories, that's television. That's anything.
I would disagree with this. This much I would say. Talking heads are not deaf. They're the most fascinating things on television if the talking heads are not actually connected to a body. That I don't think it gets any more interesting than if somebody were doing it. So what did you find? What was the best case as you, Paul Kimball, co-writer, co-producer, co-host of this new series on Canadian television? What was the best evidence that you were able to come up with on your own that substantiated a previous ghost occurrence in a location, and where did it happen?
Probably the best one was the Algonquin Hotel, which is in St. Andrews, New Brunswick, right on the border with Maine. And there's a story there, real short, bride about 100 years ago who committed suicide after her fiancé stood her up and didn't show up for the wedding. So she went up to room 473 and jumped out the window. Holly and I do this segment every episode we call Spook Hour, where we sit in whatever room's supposed to be haunted and we try and make contact, just the two of us. Nothing had happened there that night either, but every now and then I get a little feisty with the ghost, and Holly, it was so feisty with this one, I basically asked her out. Then Holly felt she had to go back for whatever reason. We went packed up gear. She went back in to sort of apologize to the spirit if there was one there, and just decompress. We had a DVR camera, digital video camera, still running in the room. There's nobody else in the room. And Holly went over to look at the monitor, and the DVR camera, I'm not a big believer in orbs. I think until this point, almost any orb that I had ever seen can be explained through non-paranormal means. But I swear, it's in the episode of Jerry's Tomorrow, out of the wall, in front of Holly, literally the shape forms, and then this orb flies in I'll call it a light anomaly, flies in a straight line. A camera picks it up right through the window where the bride was jumped out. And that's weird enough. And then about a second or two later, and there's no one else in the room, Holly still doesn't know to this day why she turned around. She actually turned around and looked, and literally following the path of this orb. And so there it is, on video. We showed it to some very experienced ghost investigators in the United Kingdom. They have 30 years between them, and they said it's the weirdest piece of video they'd ever seen. Truly anomalous. They couldn't explain it. And that's the kind of thing that makes me go,
That's tomorrow night, then, is when that particular episode of Ghost Cases airs?
Yeah.
Tomorrow night. Okay, so here's what I want to ask Paul Kimball. I want to put you on hold. I want you to hear some of the other stories that we have coming up. So I'm going to put you on hold right now, and then we'll come back to you coming up later on this hour, because I want to hear then about another one of your investigations as part of your series, Ghost Cases, which just debuted on Canadian television. Where we'll be able to see that particular video would be very cool if we could get a link to that for our webpage, maybe coming up for tomorrow night or next week when George Norrie is on. And then also, too, I'd love to get a couple of your stories coming up next. Several people who've been on hold already for Ghost to Ghost. It's underway on Ghost to Ghost AM. This is Ian Pike. It's Ghost to Ghost AM, and we'll be taking ghost stories all night long on the phones. We'll get to your first few contributions coming up in just a second. We'll also get an update again from Paul Kimball from Canadian television. Ghost Cases is his new show that's just debuting, and it's going to give us another real-life occurrence of what happened to him. If you go to the website at coasttocoastam.com, you'll see that my blog is up. I've got a couple of blogs tonight I've already posted. One was a little Halloween thing with some photos and links. And then I put up that ghost photo from what I was talking about earlier this hour with Matt Allen of WPRO, which is our Coast to Coast affiliate in Providence. And it's a couple thousand of you have already clicked on to this ghostly photo of a little girl with what appears to be her great-grandmother appearing over her shoulder. And it is the kind of creepy ghost photo that no one's been able to quite explain. It looks simple enough, but it was taken on a cell phone camera. It just doesn't make any sense. And people that Matt had talked to who were experienced with photoshopping say it's really hard to do what's on the image because of the girl's wispy hair in front of the face of the great-grandmother. But while you're there, too, you might want to take a look. I put up a couple other links on the blog. For example, the scariest chew toy that they're selling these days. I bought one for my dog at my favorite pet food shop. They're selling dried esophagus. It's perfect for a vampire dog like mine. But it's dried esophagus. It's just disgusting, but the dogs love it. It's full of glucosamine or something. It's supposed to be really good for them. But you can see my dog having at it there. And then also, you don't want to look at this one photo. I put it up there. It's the scariest thing that can happen to a homeowner. A friend of mine who just had about 3 inches of raw sewage back up in his basement. It's just, you don't even want to click onto it. Don't click onto it. Or for that matter, the scariest Christmas gift in the Vermont Country Store catalog. You don't want to see that one either. You can't even, I can't believe that they put it in the catalog, but anyway. And then finally, too, I put up a link for something. This one, do click onto. There's a great website called myparentswereawesome.com. And it's photos of people uploading photos of their parents back when their parents were really cool looking. So, gotta take a look at it because, especially on a night like Halloween, I saw people coming to the door dressed in outfits that I used to wear seriously. You know, I mean, that's kind of the weird thing about Halloween. People come to the door tonight dressed like they're in the 80s or 70s. Yeah, but it's not a costume. That's my laundry. It's not, it kills. Okay. So go take a look if you want to. There's some fun things and some not so fun things to look at coasttocoastam.com. And your calls coming up next. We'll go coast to coast with you. Gabrielle is in New Orleans, first-time caller line on Coast to Coast AM. Hi, Gabrielle.
Hey, Ian. I am so pleased to be your first caller on the first caller line. You there?
Yes, is this your first call ever to Coast?
It is, but I've tried to call before. I wanted to say I've got a vampire dog, too. She sleeps on the earth of her homeland.
Which is where?
New Orleans.
Okay, New Orleans.
Anyway, this is an experience I had while I was driving along Highway 29 in North Carolina. It's a road known as the Dragon's Tail. It's a very popular road for recreational bikers because there are about 300 curves within 9 miles. I was coming into North Carolina from the north, and it was fairly late, about 10 p.m. And this is not a populated area. Most of this area is national forest or parkland, and there aren't any houses around this particular part of the Dragon's Tail. So I was trying to get through this very dangerous piece of highway, and I was slowly coming around one of the curves, and I see a guy running along the highway down the mountain in the opposite direction where I was coming. And he wasn't exactly running. He was kind of bounding, and it looked like there was no weight hitting the pavement. He was barefoot, and he didn't have a jacket on. Now, that was strange because it was the kind of the end of October, and the mountains were getting very, very cold right about then. So I drove past, and he looked at me in a very distracted way, and when he turned his head, he turned it completely to look at me, but it didn't slow down his pace at all. I almost slowed down to ask him if he needed help, but he was just too creepy that I didn't. Not very far ahead, about several more curves up the road, I came upon a gathering of police cars with flashing blue lights, and it looked like there had been an accident. I had to slow down quite a bit, and as I passed, I saw that a biker had a terrible accident and had fallen on the road. And the guy I saw just a little ways up the road looked very much like the person that was lying on the ground. So I may have been seeing a ghost.
I think that sort of seems like that explanation which we hear from certain ghost experts who say ghosts are the spirits, the confused spirits of people who can't leave this earth, and that if he had had an accident and he was still processing the fact that he was dead, he would have just kept walking on up the road as though he still had a destination to meet, not knowing for sure that he had been killed. Yeah.
Right, and he was running. He didn't have his bike anymore.
Right.
He had to run. And he was barefoot. He didn't have a jacket on, so the coldness wasn't bothering him. It was just too weird.
Well, that's really interesting. And a great way to get us started. Thank you, Gabrielle. Worth getting you through for the first time on Coast to Coast. It's Zell in Washington, Maine. Zell. Welcome to Coast to Coast.
Happy Halloween.
And to you.
So, in the mid-'70s to the late 70s, I was living next door to an old wooden inn on the coast of Maine in Allentown, my in-laws home. And it was wintertime, and in the wintertime they closed up 2/3 of the inn and just lived in the heated third of the inn. And my mother-in-law was upstairs with my 4-year-old nephew Jamie, and Jamie used to play in the spare bedroom with some toys. And Jamie came out of the bedroom crying hysterically, saying, Grammy, Grammy, that man hit me. And she went in and there was nobody there, and he was just hysterical. So she went downstairs and waited for people to come home before she could go back upstairs. The next day, his uncle and I were over doing laundry, and no one else was home. And we used to joke quite frequently about Fred the ghost that lived in the inn. And there's been other odd little occurrences over the years of noises on the stairs and doors opening, the bells on the back of the door ringing. And we'd always say, oh, it's just Fred. So my husband then hollered up the stairs as we were going in through, Fred, you better not be hitting Jamie anymore.
Right.
One of the doors upstairs in the bedroom slammed so hard and so loud that we just decided we were going to leave.
How about that?
No wind, all the doors were closed, wintertime, no windows open, no drafts, no people, just a door going boom.
Just a ghost having a tantrum, didn't like to be told what it could do.
No, not at all.
Very interesting. Thank you, Zell. Love that story. And not uncommon, too. You know, it's funny how the door thing becomes a total cliche when people, doors closed, whatever. But if you're in a house where there's no draft and something like that happens, it's fresh. It happened to me once, too, in a house where no windows, no anything, not uneven floors, door shuts, get your attention. John is floating somewhere in the San Francisco Bay listening to Ghost to Ghost. Go ahead, John.
Happy Samhain, Minister Connor.
Oh, yes, and to you. I say happy Halloween back. But so is this something that happened to you? When you say floating in San Francisco Bay, you mean you're in some sort of boat, not floating over the bay yourself right now?
Right, I'm not in cement shoes or anything.
Okay, go ahead.
My occurrence actually happened at my old house. I was in my old bedroom at my parents' house, sleeping, sort of face down in the bed, and I felt a presence behind me very early in the morning. I sort of turned over my right shoulder to look, and I saw a sort of glowing old man just standing by the doorway. And I was sort of surprised, but, I'd seen dozens of ghosts and things sort of breaking through reality in various ways, so what might have paralyzed someone with terror sort of didn't really shock me very much. But then I sort of found myself, after sort of looking him in the eyes, lying back down again on my face, right in the same bed, only the presence felt closer. And this sort of discontinuity sort of jarred me a little bit, so I looked again, and the same old man was there, a bald old man was looking at me, only this time he was a couple steps closer. And as soon as I acknowledged that boom, I was back face down in my bed again. Only this time he felt a little bit closer. And I turned and looked, and he was there, only this time a couple steps closer. And as soon as I acknowledged that, the same thing happened again. It was like I was waking up again and again, the same dream. Until finally, when I looked and turned, and it was as though I could only feel him and couldn't even feel the bed below me. But he was standing right next to me, and then he just sort of faded away. And my room sort of kind of reappeared. And that time I was really awake and just went about my day.
There's a word for that, and I learned it tonight because there's a link on our webpage at coasttocoastia.com about a story. Scientists are working on, all the time trying to understand the fascination with ghosts and as it pertains to sleep paralysis. And that experience of which you speak ties directly into the research that they were doing on this in this story that we've linked up. Because they say, I think they refer to that period as hypnopompic, the time that you're coming out of REM sleep, and that you can be caught in a phase of sleep paralysis that you feel awake, but your body is still asleep. Your mind is still asleep, essentially, but you feel awake. And that you're coming in and out of that lucidity so seamlessly that you don't realize what you're seeing is actually being generated by your own brain as opposed to external experience. That having been said, I just want you to, that's what they said in this article. Tell me why that would make sense to you or not make sense to you based on the experience you had.
It both makes sense and also doesn't make sense. So to start off, it makes sense to me because I've had other experiences where I've been caught in a sleep paralysis sort of state, and it's been had other mystical experiences that way. Another reality, even been, like sort of forced out of my body or forced into another realm entirely.
Right.
It doesn't make sense because in this particular instance, because later while flipping through the television stations, I found a little program called Famous Ghosts of California by the History Channel, and the ghost that I saw was one of the 5 most famous ghosts of California.
Okay, fair enough. That's very interesting. And your dream predated, or pre-experienced what you saw on television.
Correct, by year.
Very good. John, thank you. That was great and very interesting. And this is just how Ghost to Ghost will go all night long. I hope that Paul Kimball, who's been monitoring this back in the earlier in the hour, we talked to Paul, who's the co-host and co-writer and co-producer of this series that's running on Canadian television called Ghost Cases. Paul, you've been comparing some of these stories to some of the things that you experienced. What do you hear so far?
Well, the one about the door is interesting because, as you say, it's a bit of a cliche in the horror film type of thing. That the door, the bell would sort of close. That actually happened to me in the episode that we aired, the network story aired. I don't own the network yet. They aired last week, which is actually up. If you go to your front page, I follow the link. It goes to our blog, and we have that episode up on the blog, so you can watch it. And what happened is, it was very odd. Holly was upstairs, it was a haunted farmhouse. Holly was upstairs with a psychic, and they were trying to contact the spirit. And, everything came for us. We'll use anything from EMF meters to psychics, anything to try and see what's going on. I was downstairs in the basement, which is supposedly haunted, all by myself. And there's this back and forth, and I could hear them through the walls, and they were saying, there's a dead baby in the basement, there's a dead baby in the basement. Well, Paul's down there. You can go down and say hello and show him where the baby's buried. And in fact, people have told me it's quite funny because I'm a coward and I'm in the basement going, no, I don't want you to show me the baby, don't come down here. And just as that happened, and I can tell you I was there's no wind, there was nothing, I've been there half an hour, nothing had happened to the door. The door behind me, as I'm sitting on the stairs in the basement, goes, and opens. And just as they were upstairs saying, go down and show Paul where the baby is. And I have to tell you, there's probably about 20 things in my life over the 42 years I've been lucky enough to live that have really, truly freaked me out or scared me. And that was one.
How about that?
Yeah.
That would qualify.
Yeah, it's just, and I'm sure, I'm a skeptic, I really am. I'm an agnostic on all this, and the part of me that's a skeptical, logical person says, well, I'm sure there must be some logical explanation for that. I went out, I thought the crew was playing practical joke on me, frankly. And the thing about the farmhouse door was, it wedged in, it closed the basement door. It was hard to open. So even if there had been a freeze, it would have to be a pretty stiff one. And there was nothing. I had heard freezes early in that evening. It was still as the grave, as they say outside. And that one really freaked me out, especially given the timing of what was going on upstairs at the same time as I'm downstairs that this happened. So that story that I heard about, anytime I hear about horror zone, that resonates with me now.
Again, you can link up to that episode then at coasttocoastam.com to Ghost Cases. This was the episode for the new Canadian television series that just aired last week. Paul Kimball is the co-host of the show and the co-investigator of these ghost stories. Is there a difference between, say, Canadian ghosts and ghosts from the United States? Are American ghosts the same as Canadian ghosts? Canadian ghosts, are they more sarcastic than American ghosts? Is there anything you see, or any difference in the character of the stories at all?
I think more Canadian ghosts probably speak French. Other than that, no, I mean, ghost stories, the people ask me, they say, because I've done a number of documentaries about UFOs and stuff, and the people say, well, what are ghost stories, what are ghost investigating like compared to UFO stories? And I go, it's all about the search of perhaps trying to find something with UFOs, like is there life out there, perhaps. But ghosts are the most existential of the whole lot because it says to us, is there life for us personally beyond what we have right here? And the stories that you hear across the world, when we were in the United Kingdom or the United States and Canada, there's a stunning similarity between them. And I don't think there's any real difference. Obviously, if you're in a place in Alabama and you're in Ontario or you're in Scotland, there's regional differences, but the crux of the stories remain the same. And there's certain characteristics that you can break down and say, okay, this is what's happening here. And as you said, I think in an earlier segment, I heard you say with one of your callers, it often seems tied to some traumatic event. So that seems to be a common theme too.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, we'll be following that, and I hope that when we can see that episode about the orb, because we won't be getting ghost cases down here in the United States, at least for a while. Will you put up a link on that page too and let us know so that we can let people see that? Because that would be really cool.
I will indeed. After it airs tomorrow and the network doesn't get mad at me to bring it up, I will make sure that is up there and everybody can see it at our blog.
Oh, very good. And then I'll send a note to the webmasters and make sure that they put that up so that people can see it on our webpage. Thank you so much. Paul, enjoyed talking to you. Thanks for getting us started. And everybody else, hang on. The phones are filling up for Ghost to Ghost. Your ghost stories for the rest of this night, all across North America and beyond. What life is out there? What life exists in here, somewhere deeply buried in a soul that doesn't want to let go of this earth? On Ghost to Ghost, this is Ian Punnett. Well, I went link crazy on the blogs tonight. I put up 2 of them, so if you want to, link up there at coasttocoastam.com. Other great stories, including that story that I mentioned in one of the previous callers about sleep paralysis, as it helps to explain ghost stories. Except that what we've already heard are the number of occurrences that happen with people who are fully wide awake, not anywhere near either going into or coming out of a dream state. So that's what, an expert is saying to try to dismiss the story which you experienced. So let's just put that little box over there to say, okay, maybe for a percentage of ghostly experiences, there is some sort of scientific explanation. What happened to you? We'll find out next on Ghost to Ghost AM. This is Ian Punnett. Let's get back started going Ghost to Ghost with Dean on a wild card line in Tampa. Go ahead, Dean.
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir. How are you doing tonight?
Happy Halloween, Dean.
Happy Halloween, sir. I'm getting chills as I'm on hold thinking about the story back in the summer of '85.
Well, we're doing something right if your own story is scaring you, so we're off to a good start.
It's very surreal, sir. That is, thinking about it on the whole part of it, I'm definitely experiencing interesting emotions. But I'm getting to the point of the story. Sir, I just moved out to Grapevine, Texas. I just got my driver's license. And a friend of mine who moved from Alaska was in Fort Worth, so I decided to take a little road trip one Saturday evening. And my mom had gotten out of town, so I was able to borrow her brand new car since I had not driven long enough to get my own car. So I'm in my mom's car, I drive to Fort Worth, I'm at this friend of mine's house, and this party next door spilled over. So he and neighborly all decided to kind of partake in what they were doing. And from just talking to people, I stumbled upon a lady by the name of Clarity. And I found her very fascinating. And it was just, the one thing I noticed, though, was we had just gotten to the party, and she was very insistent on leaving. And I just met her. She seemed like a really great girl. And just, it's like one of those fleeting moments where you're thinking, you just had the door open, but yet now she's closing the door. And then she told me she'd been abandoned by her friends and she needed a ride home. So, well, Mama raised me right, but I decided we should listen. And at this point, I'm 18. I've never been with one in my life. So I'm thinking, hey, girl, that's willing to get in my car. I'm willing to drive you to China if you need me. So I said, no problem. She goes, well, I live in Texas, which is just north of Grapevine.
So we're on the highway, sir, and I've just been driving for a few weeks now, and I'm really not sure where I'm going. I'm following her direction. And sir, the amazing thing happened. I realized that all the city lights of Fort Worth and the Metroplex had dissipated as our conversation had become very engrossing. The greatest hits of the Eagles are playing on the tape deck. And as the Long Way Home song is playing, I suddenly realized that I'm not seeing signs or anything relating to Dallas and Fort Worth. And there was no turn-offs, there was no nothing. It was so surreal because I felt like one of those kind of Quentin Tarantino movies where it's like kind of smoke on by, there's no exits, there's no nothing, you're just trapped in this, it's like a lost highway. And I remember at one point I was getting really nervous because I'm thinking I have no idea where I'm going. And suddenly I see a sign that says Oklahoma 35 miles. And I'm going, that can't be good. So she goes, oh, hold on, she goes, take a right. So I'm thinking, oh, thank God, maybe she knows where she's going. So we're suddenly in distance Texas. I'm happy, I'm awake, I'm good, I'm ready to drop her off. She goes, well, let's just make one stop. I'm like, okay. At this point, I was pretty gullible. So we go to an apartment complex, and there's a hill right in the parking lot. And she goes, well, we just need to go over the hill, and I want to show you something. When she's starting to begin, she's very persistent. It's just all about, I felt like she felt like she was on a mission. So I decided to go over there. So we go over this hill, and I suddenly come upon this stone gate, and a huge stone gate that was a part of it that had been knocked down. And it looked like something very big and hit it. So I just kind of took note of that as we walked through. It's July summer evening, still, extremely still. I mean, there's no wind, no nothing. I mean, you could literally hear, silence as a sound, and that was the sound I was hearing. And I'm falling into this graveyard. I'm not one of those people, sir, that, hey, let's go to the graveyard and have a good time. But at this point, I'm willing to try anything for the first time. So she takes me to the graveyard, and we're looking around, and I'm stopping, I'm kind of looking around, and I notice there's a full moon out. And the moon is so bright, it's almost hypnotic. And I'm looking at this thing, sir, and from out of nowhere, 7 white birds just suddenly, it was almost like they kind of like collectively formed a little flying bee. But what was so amazing was it was so quiet, you could actually hear their wings rustle, but it wasn't in a flittering moment, it was almost in like a harmonic moment, but they're all in such unity. And I'm sitting there, I'm looking at the full moon, I'm looking at these 7 brilliantly white birds, in the darkest of dark of busy nights in Texas. And I'm thinking, this is really amazing, right? And suddenly, from behind me, I hear her quoting some type of prophecy about the 7 white birds and about the returning of the girl, the angel home. And I'm getting like this chill, like you wouldn't believe, as I'm looking at the moon, I'm looking at the birds, and she's doing this prophecy thing behind me, and it's all coming together. And at the moment she says, come home, I just turned around and all I see is split of smoke, almost like that look of like, because I was Alaska, and I remember, when it's cold, you see your breath. It was like that, sir, and it was 80 degrees, and it was almost cold as it hits my cheek, and I'm standing there in the middle of the graveyard in Texas, and she's gone. And except for a whiff of smoke. So I'm screaming the name, I'm screaming for clarity in a graveyard in Texas in the middle of the night, trying to figure out what's going on. So after about a half an hour of looking around, there's a gas station right down the street. So I decided to amble my way down there, get some gas, the road trip home, and I must have looked shooken up. Because the guy goes, are you okay? I said, yeah, you won't believe what just happened. And I tell him the story. And he looks at me, he goes, son, you're the third one that's happened to me. He goes, I've been working the night shift now for 7 years. I said, let me tell you a little story about clarity. And I'm like, I literally, my knees, just as like my knees are wobbling when I speak about this. He starts to tell about this. There was a prom night again back in sometime in the 70s that a group of teenagers were driving in this apartment complex that hit the hill, got over the hill, and with this big old, like this pickup truck, it hit that stone gate that I noticed that had been knocked down and wound up killing everyone in the truck, including the driver, a young lady who was graduating that night at the prom named Clarity. Turns out, you might go, you're not the first one to return Clarity home. So at this point, I'm thinking, so here's the part where Coast to Coast comes in. And one ghostly night, I call into Arvell, and I tell him to go story Clarity. And sir, I'm standing in Burnside, Texas, and it's another still Texas night. There's not a cloud in the sky. It's 2 a.m. I'm telling Clarity. I'm telling about Clarity to Art, and I hang it. At the moment I tell the story and I say, go home, you guys click off. There was a burst of lightning that hit the transformer right across the street.
And there's a vertical lighting there. The moment your phone clicks off, that lighting at the transformer lights up my room brilliantly. I turn around and I see 5 people standing in my room. And I'm alone. So I'm like, and it was the most amazing thing was it was like 5 women of all various ages. It looked like a family. But it was like it wasn't our time period. It was like sometimes like 100 years ago.
Okay.
They were standing there very calm, and the lightning of the light of the transformer is just for a moment I see them clear as day. And sir, I wasn't frightened, I wasn't scared. It was like acceptance to that scene of before. Just a week before that, I nearly got into a catastrophic accident because I'm driving the highways of Dallas-Fort Worth, and I remember people running around my car, making sure my car was safe. And those very same people showed up that night when I hung up the phone with the Coast to Coast. So you never know. You can have them. It's all Coast to Coast.
Very good. Well then, and I'll be curious to see what happens then as this multi-chaptered story of yours continues this time next year then. And we'll hear the update of what happened when you told the update of what happened on Ghost to Ghost AM. Judy is in Texas on Coast to Coast. Judy,
Yes.
happy Halloween. And to you too.
I'm going to try to go as quickly as possible. I know there are a lot of people excited to share their experiences.
Yes, there are.
I happen to have a construction company, and a lot of the houses that we work on are where people have passed away.
Right.
And watching these programs where they have the ghost hunters saying, okay, well, show us that you're here and make these noises or, knock something around, that's only half of the job of why these forces or why these spirits are showing themselves. They're asking for help to go to the other side, much like you hear the EVP saying, help me. They do. That's what they want is some help. They need some guidance. Maybe they need, excuse the pun, maybe some clarity. But I, along with my construction crews, knowing that we run into, shadows and actually we can feel the actual room or, where somebody has passed away. We know how to get together to help the spirits go to the other side. So I think there's a lot more, as far as really being able to help people get closure to be able to go to the light so they can be with, with their loved ones. And the last situation, the man had passed away in a room. He was dead, I guess, 3 days before anybody even found him. And there was, a moisture imprint of his body in the wooden floor. And we could see his shadow going around the house like he was looking at what we were doing to make sure that we were working on his house to make it nice. Apparently he was a painter. So we went ahead and just, told him, it's more than welcome anytime, and when things started to get a little bit bizarre where we realized that he was asking for help, then we, actually had helped him go to the other side.
How did you do that?
We all held hands around the where
spot on the floor?
Yes, that's the portal, and where the person had passed. And we all got together. We had to do it in Spanish because the gentleman, was Hispanic. And we had actually seen him manifest outside the window like he was looking in. And he really looked solid. It was just amazing. And we all got together and told him that he had all of his relatives on the other side waiting for him, and that he was a good person, and that he didn't have to worry about the house, that it was going to be a beautiful house, and that it was time for him to move on to be with his people. And it was almost like, how it feels like you could cut the air with the knife, when you have tension. It was just like all of a sudden this wind seemed to just gust through the house, and you could tell that it felt so positive, right after, we had prayed for him. So, I really appreciate being able to share that with you.
Well, that's very interesting.
And I hope that Paul will keep that in mind, when he's doing his show, that there are spiritualists that will help actually finish the job instead of just, leaving in the middle of when the EVPs are saying, help me,
Well, and thank you, Judy. I appreciate that. And I think that there's something interesting too, Joe, about people who are going into a ghost experience, like Paul Kimball, she's referring to from Canadian television, who are just trying to see whether they can replicate the experience, or rather have a similar experience happen to them. And I think that sometimes with the ghost adventurer types that go into these hauntings, I think that maybe sometimes they're trying to do too much, or maybe it gets confused as to exactly what it is they're doing. I think your points are real good one. But I do think it's cool that Paul just went in with just kind of an open mind to see whether or not they could see the same things that other people have seen. That in itself is kind of science, right? Is whether or not you can have the same experience repeated. And then maybe after that, then you send in the people who will help these spirits move along. Scott is in Cape Cod on Ghost to Ghost. Scott.
Hello, Ian.
Hey.
Nice to talk to you. About 15 or 14 years ago, my friend and I used to go around the Western New York State area, checking out different paranormal sites for ourselves.
Right.
We were both what you would call, I guess, skeptics. And we basically never encountered anything at any of these sites. But we heard of there's a Holiday Inn in Grand Island, New York. And it's a haunted room 422. So I called up there requesting that room. At first they wouldn't give it to me. But we kind of made up a fib. I hope they're not listening to this now, but we made up a little fib that we were starting a Haunted Getaways magazine. So they totally changed their tune. They're like, sure, we'll reserve that room for you.
I'm pretty sure the statute of limitations on fake magazines has run out, so you're okay.
Thank God. But yeah, so we went there. We were pretty much just in the room the whole time. Nothing happened. And my buddy went down pretty early. He was pretty tired. And I had just watching TV. And I started to get this horrible, almost like a tightening feeling in my chest. And it started to get really cold in the room. And there was no, the fan, no air conditioning was on at the time. And I just couldn't believe what was happening. I was like, oh my God. And I'm looking around and it felt like the room was closing in on me. And I'm not agoraphobic or, or claustrophobic, anything like that. And just got progressively colder and colder. And really started to freak me out. I woke my friend up and I thought he was joking around with him at first, and he started to feel the same thing. So we never really had, we never saw any ghostly visages or anything, but it freaked both of us up to the point where we kind of gave up for a while on that. So I don't know.
Freak you out enough that you might actually want to start a real magazine about ghost stories. You might have thought about that.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Well, you know what? I spoke to somebody earlier in the week who had a similar experience. She told me that she was visiting a friend's house, and that this friend had warned her that there's a ghost in the house. And she kind of laughed it off. She was 16, and her girlfriend lived in the basement. And she was down there kind of sleepover. The next morning, her friend had even said to her, again, hey, keep an eye out, there's a mischievous ghost around here. And that the ghost was of a 16-year-old boy who died in the house, that he was not a mean-spirited ghost, but they had this presence, this sense of him all the time around. And so the woman who told me the story said that she's not particularly a believer in ghosts, although she said this happened to her, and she's been really trying to process it ever since. Is that her friend had called down and she was home for breakfast or something, and she was left alone in the basement, and she was fixing her hair, makeup in the mirror, and so she was concentrating on her own face as she looked in the mirror, and suddenly the distinct feeling, not a small feeling, but the distinct feeling of somebody tugging at the back of her hair so hard that it yanked her head back. So she's looking in the mirror, she both sees and feels her head go jerked back. And she turned around, and there was nobody there. And she shot up those basement stairs. So, yes, sometimes those presences stay with us. And I hope that you stay with us, too. Lots of people on hold with their ghost-to-ghost stories. I know that as I look down the list here, we're representing not just all over the United States, but also up in Canada as well. If you missed the first hour, go back and catch it on Streamlink. It's worth it. And if you don't get through tonight, of course, there are many opportunities in the future. We'll try to get an open line for you, but if not, we'll have other ghost guests coming up. And to be careful on ghost guests coming up who will be talking about these stories too. So good luck tonight, and just keep listening to Ghost AM. This is Ian Punnett. And we're going ghost to ghost for all of your stories. We'll get an open line for you coming up next on Ghost AM. This is Ian Punnett. Let's pick it up with Ethan in Minneapolis, first time caller line on Ghost to Ghost. Ethan?
Me?
Are you Ethan?
Yeah, that's me. I'm Ethan. Say, I had a lot of weird experiences, but way back from 18, 25, or whatever years ago, all the way from paranormal experiences to extremely close encounter of UFO. Anyways, 2 years ago, I'm in a house that I owned, and I have all the lights are off. The curtains in the front picture window aren't on. The windows just bare glass. And I live in Minneapolis, so I keep the door locked all the time. And I'm walking to the door, I open the door, I walk in. And I didn't shut the door behind me, which is unusual. And I just went straight in the house, was refrigerator. And my son's roommate was laying on the couch, and his eyes are adjusted, to the lights and everything there from the street light outside. And he jumps up and hits for me real quick and flips on the light. And at that time, I turned around when the light flipped on, right by the refrigerator, and he had a shock in his face. I mean, you could see his face was just like shocking. And then he said that a girl followed me in, about 5'5", blonde hair, dimples on her cheek, and a red blazer. And she sat at that chair, he pointed at the chair, and as soon as I put the light on, she disappeared. But the weird thing is I've always had weird things happen in my life, but a couple weeks prior to this, I always get this cold draft in the house. So all of a sudden I smell perfume. So it's just me, my son, and another guy living there, and I'd get this cold draft and I smell perfume. There's no woman in the house. And I thought that was pretty weird. And
Really?
yeah.
Very interesting, right? And did you ever find out about the blonde girl with the dimples?
Well, no, but I never found out about that. The roommate I had was so kind about it. He started packing a couple days later and moved out. He said, I can't live in this house no more. He can't.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I appreciate that. Great stories. And keep them coming. Let's get back to west of the Rockies where Rob is in Washington on Coast to Coast. Rob?
Hey.
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 Happy Halloween.
Yeah, happy Halloween to you too. Well, I grew up in a town called Bellevue, Washington, not too far from Issaquah where I live now. And Bellevue's just a little outside of Seattle, Seattle, Washington. And years ago, back in the late 70s, early 80s, I was kind of in elementary school around the time. I remember my uncle, who was probably about 18 at the time, he lived with my mom and dad, and he came just crashed into the GoPro one time at night, and when he was pounding on the door, he was just screaming for my mom to open up the door. My mom comes over, she opens up the door, and he comes in, and he was just white as a ghost. And I'll never forget that. It was just actually just my wife, my mom, me, and my sister at home at the time. And he comes in, he's just like, Dad, which is my mom's name. And he's just like, you wouldn't believe what happened to me. And he comes inside, and he sits down, he starts relaying this story about what happened to me. Just to kind of give you a background of my uncle, he's not the kind of guy that makes up a story that would ever make him look like a wimp or scared in any sort of way. I mean, he was just kind of like an all-American athlete. And in fact, that night that this occurred, he had just gotten back from a wrestling meet. And I mean, he was like a state champion wrestler, football player, everything. And just not too much scares this guy. And what had happened was we lived along a long stretch of road in Bellevue called 148. And there used to be this big gap where there was no street light on this one lake, which is called Blueberry Lake. The lake was surrounded by blueberry bushes, and then in the spring and summer people would pick them, and that's why it's called Blueberry Lake. And so he got dropped off after a wrestling match somewhere on the other side of that lake, and as he was walking home along 148, he started walking through the area of the lake where it was really dark. There was no street light. The next street light was, you're looking at like 200 yards down, like about a good 2 football field. And as he's walking, he's kind of walking at a normal pace. He says he begins to, hear something pushing through the bushes just to the left of him, our blueberry bushes. Now, the blueberry bush is about 6 feet high. And they're crossed off, and something was just pushing through the bushes, and it was kind of tasting him, as he recalled. And he would stop, and he would look to his left and see what it was, and then he would stop. And then he would begin walking, proceed walking again, and then he would proceed walking. And right away he knew, obviously, whatever this was could see him, and it was intelligent enough to stop him. He was stopping, and he wasn't quite too sure, what it was. He kind of picked up his pace, and sure enough, you could hear this thing picking up his pace as well, just kind of pushing through the blueberry bushes. And eventually, he picks his pace up a little bit more, and it can't push through the blueberry bushes as fast as he's walking by this time. So he hears it behind him, exit the bushes, and come onto the sidewalk where he is. And as he says it sounded just like a human bare foot fall on cement. It was just like a slapping sound, like your bare feet would sound on cement. And he could hear it like slapping, and it was just kind of like a fast walk. And so he kind of picked up to a jog, and then this thing picked up into a jog. And he doesn't really know what to do at this, and his heart's pounding, so then he just bullets his car as fast as he can, and he could run back down. He was an athlete. Sure. And this thing starts taking off after him as fast as he could, but because my uncle was so fast, when he began to pull away from this thing, he could hear this thing getting further and further behind him. And then suddenly he heard it kind of skip, and then as he said, he heard these huge thunderous wings just slapping the air. Just like slapping, and then immediately he no longer heard footfall. This thing had come off the ground, and he can actually hear not only the reverberation of the wing beats. I mean, he can actually hear it or feel it on his hair and on his jacket from behind him. It was thumping so hard, and then as it began to fly, they picked up speed and stay with him. And he was just running as hard as he could to the nearest light, which was, like I said, a good 200 yards away. And he said, as it just began to get above him, he said he got to the light above the first street light, and he said this thing screamed, and then it shot straight up. But like it didn't like the light, it kind of avoided the light. And then each street light was about, they're about 50 yards apart. About 50 yards apart, I would say. And so he kept running in between the street lights. It would dive bomb him in between street lights, and then it would go back up out of the light. It would not like the light. And our apartments wasn't too far beyond that, about a good another 100, 150 yards, but it was all uphill. He had to run uphill. And as he made the turn into our apartment building, there was a bunch of trees, a lot of pine trees right there. It cut the corner, and he could hear it crash into the trees, and he just heard big branches snapping, and he heard it scream, just kind of, and then we were just the second apartment building in, and then we were on the second floor, and then he just come huffing up that floor about tore the door down, pounding it, just screaming for my mom.
Is this winged creature was coming in between the lampposts? Did he get any sort of look at what it was while you said it was dive bombing it?
No, that's the whole thing about it. Like, that's the kind of mystery about it. It was he never. I mean, I guess it's easy for us to look back in Monday morning quarterback that after, but I guess if I was in his shoes, and like he said, he goes, all I could think about was just running. I didn't kind of like turn my head. He was just running for his life, and it absolutely felt threatened by whatever this thing was. And so,
and had anybody else reported this in the Blueberry Lake area? I mean, is this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, that's the strange part about this was around this time. Around this time, there was a lot of little kids that gone missing in the Bellevue area. And I'll never forget the Bellevue Police Department used to come to our school almost weekly, and talk to us kids about just not stopping anywhere, going straight on after school. Don't cut through the woods. Don't talk to strangers. A lot of kids began disappearing. There was also a lot of dogs and cats disappearing. Just a lot of strange things happening around that time. It was really bizarre. And what's funny is there's years later, I'm talking 15, 20 years later, I ran into some really good friends of mine who used to live in Delhi, and I rarely tell this story. And I actually, for whatever reason, I told that story to them. They were like, "You gotta be kidding, Rob. I got a story for you." And I was like, "Okay." So they started telling me they actually live near Sammamish High School, which is not too far. It's only actually about a block from Blueberry Lake. They live near there. And Nancy and Daryl, the son and mother, and the son was telling me the story about he and his mom used to walk around the track, not too far from Blueberry Lake. He used to walk around the track at Sammamish High School, and he said he used to kick his soccer ball around while his mom was walking at exercise. He says one time he goes, "Wow," he goes, I kicked the soccer ball, and it went off the track into these large rhododendron bushes. In fact, those rhododendron bushes are still there. And he says, "I go down there and retrieve my ball. The ball is rolled underneath the rhododendron. This is broad daylight. But these rhododendrons, I know what he's talking about. These are extremely thick bushes.
Right.
So he goes down to retrieve his ball, and he kind of squats down. He can see his ball way down at about 4 or 5 feet. He tries to reach in, and then he grabs the ball and pulls it out. And then he notices what he thinks at the time is a dog. And he's thinking, "Oh, what's this dog doing in here?" He's all kind of cowered up, and he's barely seeing it, but he thinks it's a dog. And he goes, "Hey boy." And he starts kind of whispering, come here. He's trying to get it to move, and it's not moving. He's thinking, "That's strange. What's this dog doing?" And so my buddy Daryl reached his arm inside the rhododendron bush all the way up to his neck. And he says, "I touched its fur," and he goes, "And it was like wet fur." And he goes, "When my finger penetrated through the hair," he goes, "I could feel the warmth of his body beneath it." And he goes, "Right at that moment," he goes, "I saw it was not a dog. It was like a humanoid-looking face, and it was covered in like a dark gray hair. The face was gray. He said he could see a nose, everything, and then right when he poked it, he had ended up poking it right in the shoulder, and he said the eyes opened, and the eyes were just red. And then he said it kind of like smiled like a grimace, but not a smile, like it's more of a grimace, kind of grimaced at him.
And then he just like jumped up, screamed for his mom, and took off running. And man, that was a pretty freaky story. And all that happened around the same time, and it was just kind of neat how we kind of ran into each other. And I ended up having to tell him my story, and he relayed my story. And I was just like, wow, there was something really, really strange around that time.
Well, I appreciate that, Ron. In fact, what's interesting is that they may or may not be connected stories. You know, and kind of what he describes there sounds a little bit more like sort of the classic Dogman stories that we've been hearing about mostly from the upper Midwest. Yours sound like something a little bit different, that which happened to your uncle. Sound a little bit more like the sort of the Thunderbird stories, right? Or the sort of giant ancient predators, which many people maintain these raptors are still with us. Or maybe it is some sort of other thing falling into the category of, D, all of the above, shapeshifter, whatever. But that's what Ghost to Ghost is all about, and that's why Vicky's hanging on too with her story from Midland, Texas. Vicky? Vicky? Yep, she's gone. I was just getting to you, Vicky, and I'm sorry, it looks like you hung up just as we got there. Call back if you can. Tim is in San Diego. Tim, can we get you in before the top of the hour?
Sure. Happy Halloween, and Halloween my dad back in Wyoming.
That's good. Happy Halloween, Dad.
All right. Well, let's see. I was given 3 months to live. I had diffuse acidic lymphoma, a rare kind of cancer, and all the people with my type of diet. And when I had gotten it, and I think 13 cases, so they pretty much didn't even know how to treat it. But they were going to give me my first treatment in Portland, Oregon, and my mom couldn't come with me, so my aunt drove me up there to get more biopsy work done. And during the operation, I had died. And I just remember seeing, like, kind of going to lights and stuff, and then sort of flashing through some of my past. And then all of a sudden I remember kind of seeing my house and my room and stuff, and then my mom. And then it kind of cut out, and I didn't really think much of it. And then my mom had been going to college, and she was in her finals, doing finals and stuff, so she couldn't come with me and take me to get my biopsy stuff, so my aunt took me. And she came home from school. Her boyfriend at the time, he went into the restroom downstairs, so she needed to go, so she went upstairs. And she said that she had this letter, and she was reading it, and it was from my brother Brad. And she's reading the letter, and she said, here's exactly what happened. I get home from the hospital, and I go to the front door and open it up, and I see my mom, and I said, and for some reason I'm like, Mom, did I get a letter from Brad? And she says, yeah, and she's looking like kind of weird. So she goes and gets it, and I read it, and it's pretty touchy and stuff. So the next day, she takes me to my nutritionist, and that's how I actually beat the cancer. I didn't do the traditional radiation and chemo. I did it through nutrition.
And whatever worked for you, I'm glad it worked for you.
Yeah, and prayer, I talked to God and stuff and prayed, and so, but the nutrition really helped too. So anyway, so she brings me to my nutritionist, and then I guess she told her that a story and that some stuff, weird stuff has been happening with me and everything. So they wanted me to draw pictures of what I'm thinking and what I'm seeing. I'm like, you guys are good. And so then we're on our way home, and it's like kind of storming and stuff, and she pulls over and says, "Hey, I gotta tell you, I'm really freaked out." And she's all, "You're like powerful or something." So, but on the way to our appointment though, I see this car, and it looks like it's gonna crash right into us. We're driving on the freeway, and I see this Ranchero. I look over, I'm looking at my mom, and I kind of see out the corner of my eye, it comes right around like in the back lane, we're like in the number 2 lane, and it cuts right in front of us, and then goes off and just hits like an embankment that didn't look like an gnarly crash, but it almost took us out. So I told her, wow, that was crazy. And she said, what are you talking about? I said, that car crash. And she said, well, I didn't see what you're talking about. And that means that we got to go?
It means that we want to hear the end of the story.
Okay, so then my mom says, she pulls over and she says, Timmy, when you were in the hospital, you died. And, or did you, what happened? She goes, when I came home, I went upstairs, I breathed later, and then you came and you talked to me, and I told you to go out and close the door, and I'll come back and I'll talk to you in a little bit when I'm done reading the letter from my brother Brad. So then,
Hang on, Tim, I'm going to ask you I wanted to get the whole story before the top of the hour, but it sounds like you're going to need to organize that ending a little bit, and we'll come back for it. And we'll ask everybody to keep those stories focused, too, so we can get everybody in tonight. On Ghost to Ghost, this is Ian Bryant. Well, we're going to grab Tim. We just had him on before the top of the hour, and then the music was running, and I think Tim was just getting up to the climactic kind of revelation of the story of Ghost to Ghost AM tonight. So Tim in San Diego, so if I were to give a headline to this story, the headline is, your mother saw your ghost, saw you as a ghost when you died on the operating table.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so what happened was that right when I get back from all of it, like a week later, I get back and she's taking me to my nutritionist appointment, and I see this car crash, and then she looks over and says, what are you talking about? Because I told her, wow, you see that crash? And then she's like, what are you talking about? And then like 5 seconds later, like a delay, and then it happened. And we just avoided getting in that crash. So then we went to the doctor's appointment, and she's telling them the nutritionist about what happened. So she's trying to make me draw pictures, and I think these people are crazy. And so then we're on my way home from my appointment, it's later in the evening, and it's storming and stuff. My mom pulls over on the freeway, and she said, I'm really scared, I'm freaked out about what things have happened lately. And she said, when you were in the hospital, I came home from school, and I went to the restroom upstairs because Tim was in the other bathroom, and then she says that she was reading a letter from my brother, and I told her, Mom, I don't feel very good. And so she looked at me and said I looked really pale and stuff. And she says, well, honey, go close the door and give me my space. I'll come back and I'll talk to you in a little bit. But when she was done, she went out there and looked for me and thought, oh my God, he's in the hospital. So then she ran downstairs, and her boyfriend at the time was still in the bathroom. And so when he came out and she got home, she said, something terrible happened to Timmy. We got to go to we got to find out what's going on. So she calls my uncle.
Okay. I got to get to the story. Andy's got to come somewhere here too, because got so many people waiting. Okay.
Oh yeah, she called my aunt. My aunt said, yeah, Timmy's in the recovery room right now. And I woke up and I had these pimples around my chest. They said that I had died and that they were revived.
Wow. Well, glad you got revived. Thank you for getting to the end of the story, and also thank you for hanging on as long as you did. A lot of people who are hanging on want to tell their story. They get a chance to do it next. Ghost to Ghost. Let's keep them as short as we can and focused to the main meat of the story next. Ghost to Ghost AM, this is Ian Bryant. Let's go to Lori, who's been waiting in British Columbia on the international line on Ghost to Ghost. Lori?
Hi, Ian. I will keep this one short, okay? About 6 years ago, I lived and worked out in like a little bed and breakfast. There's like a small restaurant and store. And I was there as a cook. And 2 years before I had even started working there, the previous owner had died of a heart attack right outside of the kitchen.
Anyway, I saw this guy everywhere. And one day, I was in the kitchen prepping out for dinner. And there was not a soul in the restaurant or the store. It was really, really quiet. And I was working like on like the island in the middle of the kitchen, you know, doing prep work. And I hear somebody coming from the restaurant into the kitchen, right in front of me kind of thing. Like going through the push door to get into the kitchen. And lowering a tray of dishes and stuff. And I look up and there's no one there. And the next thing I know, there's cutlery in front of my head.
Cutlery flying through the air.
Yeah. And 2 seconds later, it was like somebody had walked around the island to right beside me and knocked everything off the shelf.
Okay, that's freaky.
I know, it was really freaky.
And the origin of the flying cutlery, there is no other explanation. Nobody had...
There was not a soul around.
There was not a box of knives that were being balanced on a neighborhood seesaw or anything like that.
No. But it was like a spoon and a fork came flying right across at my head.
Wow.
I know. And I ran out of the kitchen into the store and I was like freaked right out.
I bet. So has anybody else ever reported a similar incident?
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people have seen this man that had passed away.
Have they also been sporked like you, where they had
No,
cutlery?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
I bet it was, for us, that was well worth you hanging on. I hope it was worth it for you too. So thank you for sharing that. Appreciate that. That's Lori on the international line. Let's go to wildcard line. Luke is in Ducks territory. Are you a Ducks guy, Luke?
I am.
That was
It was a very good game today.
It was an awesome game.
Got a lot of excited people in the town tonight.
I was totally impressed. And I know that they're suffering down at USC, but that was some seriously cool football I was watching today. So way to go, Ducks.
Yeah, well, hey, this is my ghost story. Okay, about 15 years ago, I was living in the basement in this house up here in Portland. And there's no windows or anything, and I had a strand of Christmas lights that ran from one corner of the ceiling to the other corner of the ceiling. And in the center, I had attached them with a piece of duct tape. So there was kind of I don't know what you call it, but they were attached to the center of the ceiling, all right? So there was like two sort of bow type things. Anyways, I got into this sort of meditation type of deal where I would sit in the center of my room and I would sit in the middle of a circle of candles that I would light around myself, and I would put a candle right in front of me and I would stare directly into it and just sort of zone out on it. And one night, I'm sitting down there in the center of the candle, and for some reason I started thinking about ghosts, and I just started really fixating on it. I was just like asking in my conscience, saying, if there's anybody here, show yourself, show yourself. I just kept saying that over and over in my mind. And after maybe about, 15 seconds of doing that center strand of Christmas lights came unattached, and my Christmas lights started swinging back and forth in above. Like I heard it drop, and then they just started swinging. And that was the end of my ghost. Like, that was the end of me thinking, ooh, I wonder if there's any way that we can conjure up some spirit.
Right.
There's absolutely no way that, because a lot of people have said, well, the tape just come and done, but not at that exact moment where I was.
Not that exact second. So here's my question. Do you think that was the ghost of Christmas past, the ghost of Christmas present or future?
I really don't know. I didn't stick around.
Didn't bother stick around to ask a lot of questions. I don't blame you.
I blew the candles out, turned my lights on, and spent the night upstairs.
That's very interesting. Thank you. We appreciate that. Great story. Let's get to Alan in Fresno, California on Ghost to Ghost. Alan? Really? Oh, really? Okay. Is that it?
No.
No second act, Alan? Just
I am slowly trust me as long as I will tell you.
You are wait. You are Gasmodius? Gasmodius? Asmodius. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I am the possession of the thing. I can command a lot of demons. I am without anybody tonight. But this body is going weak. I need your to come there, soul to me.